Hello, folks. I'm just going to wait. We have people still slowly trickling in, and we'll get started in a minute. I hope everybody's doing well today. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the 4th episode of the Strategy Institute's Digital Marketing for Financial Services Virtual Event Series. My name is Lakina, and I'll be your host today. Today's topic is how to attract and retain your next generation of loyal customers. Over the next hour or so, I'll be joined by some of the top minds in digital marketing. Now, I would also just like to take a minute to thank today's webinar sponsor, Stukent. For those of you who don't know, Stukent is a digital courseware provider in the high school and higher education space. I would also like to take a minute to share with you some of the features of the virtual platform. To your right, you'll see a chat and Q&A box. Can everyone see it? Great. I noticed some of you have already started chatting on there, so I do encourage everyone to use the live chat and treat it like a live in-person event and to engage with your fellow attendees. We are taking questions for our speakers. Please use the Q&A section to post your questions, and we'll try to address them at the end of each presentation. You will also see a handout section where you'll find today's presentation for download. And lastly, we have some polls that will pop up during the presentation, so don't be alarmed if you see a poll pop up. I kindly ask you to submit your answer, and your participation will help us develop future discussion. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our first speaker, Stuart Draper, the CEO of Stukent. Hey there, Stuart.
Hey, it's good to be with you, Lakina, and everyone else. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. We're definitely looking forward to your presentation today and today's panel discussion. So I will go off camera and you can take it away, Stuart.
All right, you guys, it's so good to be with you. To start, I want to have some fun. We're going to be talking about how to attract and retain your next generation of loyal customers. And that next generation is unique. It's different. They even have a different language. I'm going to cue a video here. Hope this works and we don't have any technical difficulties.
I'm about to leave.
But I mean, if we're going
to those are some neat.
Whoa. If we're going to be talking about how to attract the next generation of customers, we got to understand their language first. So some of you may have seen this. I think it's funny and sad all at the same time. But let's take 2 minutes and watch this. Chat in anything you think's funny or that stands out to you, or that maybe you'll learn something new from this.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Carl. So it seems like every other week, the kiddos of Generation Z seem to come out with new slang terms that, quite frankly, confuse the rest of us older generations. So the goal today is to learn how to speak some of that Gen Z lingo. Join me today on how to translate some phrases is our favorite spokesperson for the Gen Z kids, my cousin Brock. Say hello, Brock. Brock, say hello.
Stop.
All right, let's get started.
You guys have the Wi-Fi password?
All right, Brock. We're going to start with some simple ones. Yeah. Okay. Hello. How are you? Sa. Friends. Fam. Family. Fam jam. It was a fun event. The fest was lit. Okay. I'm about to leave. I'm finna dip set. Those are some neat shoes. Them kicks are dripping. I would be glad to help. Bet. My favorite team lost. Dudes took an L. My favorite team lost very bad. Dudes got clapped. He seems upset. He little mad. He seems very upset. He big mad. I like this music. That's a bop. I'm not lying. No cap. I'm sorry that happened to you. Oof. That's an interesting statement. Weird flex, but okay. I'm not a fan of these appetizers. These apps are booty. I completely agree with that statement. Facts. I agree. Yeet yeet. Excuse me. Yeet. Wow, that's exciting news. Yeet. Congratulations on your baby boy. Yeet. What does yeet even mean? Yeet is yeet. That doesn't help. It's like when fam comes slipping in with their drippin' swag, jamming to some sick bop. And no cap, you know these facts are about to be litty fresh to death. You're like, oh. I'm not big mad at that bitty response. Yeet. I don't get it. Weird flex, but okay. I don't know.
All right, you guys. I'm sure some of you have heard some of those. It was fun to read some of the comments coming in. Hopefully, we can better understand this generation, and I think hopefully create some content around that will be fun and engaging for that generation. She mentioned Stukent before. I'll quickly tell you who I am. I'm Stuart Draper. I was the founder and CEO of GetFoundFirst.com, a Google Premier partner. And I got asked to go back to my alma mater and teach digital marketing. And in that experience, I was banging my head against the wall with the curriculum that was provided. Having hired recent graduates, some of you I'm sure have seen that what they come out of college knowing and understanding is not enough a lot of the time. And in my experience there, I decided I would co-author a textbook. I wrote the book, Digital Marketing Essentials. We paired it with a simulation called Mimic. It gives students 50 grand in simulated ad dollars so that they can practice writing and running their own online ad campaigns. And it's been used by Harvard, UCLA, Stanford, Columbia, Wharton, some big name schools, and all the way down to Fox Valley Technical College and other schools that you may not have heard of, but it's used in over 1,000 institutions across the globe. And Stukent's an Inc. 5000 company, 3 years running now. We've been told we're in this year's list. We just don't know where yet. Excited for that news. A part of my interest in joining you today, my time is spent mostly speaking with marketing professors, right? And I've spoke all over the world to them about digital marketing. But recently, last year, we acquired a personal financial literacy simulation called Mimic Personal Finance. And it's used in about 2,300 high schools across the US and growing quickly. I'll talk more about the simulation and what it does later. But I'm excited to share one specific idea as it relates to that with you as well. But let's jump into the first poll and talk about digital marketing and attracting these Gen Z-ers. So please select your most successful form of digital marketing efforts. I'm curious, at your financial institution, what's working best, or where are you guys focusing the most? Search, social, display, or remarketing? And I am not sure that I'm going to be able to see those results right now. That's one thing that I was unable to test in advance. Lakina, if you can, pipe in and tell me if you can see those results, because on my screen, I'm currently not seeing those.
Hey, Stuart, if you actually go into the polls and where it says open next to Q, you can see the results there.
All right, open. Okay, cool. So I can see it. Here we go. So remarketing is 38%. Yes, I'm glad to hear that. But it's a pretty solid mix. Paid search is 24%. Paid social, 20%. Display ads, 20%. And remarketing is the most successful form at 35%. With paid search now kind of jumping up, it's now at 27%. So thanks for taking that. It helps me as we move forward in this. And I think that it's interesting information for you guys as well as you hear from your peers, knowing that it's a pretty good mix for them, but remarketing is standing out the most. So I hope you're ready to get some new and actionable ideas. The next 5-10 minutes, I'm going to blur through a lot of ideas fast. I hope, if nothing else, that you walk away and go, hey, I just wasted what I thought was 20 minutes with this guy, but one idea came from it, and I'm going to go implement it now in my business. So let's jump into those. TikTok ads are new. Most of you have probably heard that TikTok has launched their ads platform. Go to getstarted.tiktok.com to learn more. I feel like if you want to reach this generation, there's no better way. No more golden time. I mean, this is basic. Like getting on TikTok as a financial institution right now would be like being the first company to sell T-shirts online in circa 2003 when Google Ads launched. Like, there's just a new opportunity here with a new platform and an audience that's massive and very much that Gen Z audience. As we talk more about Gen Z, think back to when you were their age that they currently are. Right? When you were in high school, when you were in college, think back to then. And as it relates to the love game back then, right? It was a numbers. You got to go get their number, right? Now you got to get their email and their cookies from a business perspective. Get those pixels so you can do that remarketing. You got to get the subscription. We use a platform. When you go to our website, we try to get you to subscribe to updates and things that are happening on our website, on our blog. VWO is a platform we use for that. It's fantastic. We also have exit intent pop-ups from our CRM that we use, which is HubSpot. And another thing besides the emails, the typical subscriptions, you guys have mobile apps. If you can get those app downloads early, find some way that maybe you don't even have to have a bank account to care to have our app, then you can get those app downloads. Once you have an app downloaded, then you're going to try to get as much time as you can with this boy or girl you're interested in, right? Because you're going to be able to do the app notifications there. You can hit them with remarketing there. You can do the email drips. And I think it's really important, if you remember back to when you were dating, to get personal, right? Like, I knew Lindsay loved me when I farted in front of her and she didn't run away, right? She might have hit me in the shoulder or something. Okay, I'm getting probably TMI here, but you got to get personal. And what I mean by that, and I hope you'll remember this part of what I say about get personal more than the fart joke, is personalization at every level. And I'll talk about it through these next ideas. With conferences and events, you can sponsor the conference. When you do, ask for the attendee list. When you get that attendee list, there's names and emails, and you have a chance there to email blast out and personalize that email. There's other ways at conferences to have fun and do something unique. You know, you guys have all seen the things like the money machine where the money's blowing, you try to grab it. There's really cool things happening in VR that can be used. So if you were to go to, I'm going to go to my chat. I'll chat this in here, guys. There's a site, Fiverr.com. Some of you have probably heard of it. It's Fiverr with 2 R's on the end. I just chatted it there for everyone. If you search on Fiverr.com for VR experience, there's some cool things happening there, very inexpensive, and you can find talent and then pay them a lot more to do even more advanced specific things for your brand. When you have a conference or event, you need to create digital ads and landing pages specific to that event. I'll talk more about that idea in a little bit. I'll move on. You can do quizzes and surveys. It's all about getting that email or that next interaction with them, that second date. You got the good old-fashioned giveaways. We do a thing where we ask attendees in advance. When we sponsor an event, we're like a platinum sponsor level. We ask for a favorite candy bar, or when they enter their information and they give it to us, we make it a little more fun by asking for favorite candy bar, and we find ways to then use that message and mention the candy bar later and things like that. But at the end of the day, I think more than anything with conferences and events, you've got to turn them into a digital friend. And the way to do that is to find ways to make them get out their phone and connect with you. Okay. Geo-targeting. So you can set up ad campaigns that only show up on devices that are within a range of a location. So around your branches, throw up an ad that says, if you're, visit our branch here for, to enter our next giveaway, or whatever things that you guys are doing fun at your local branches, you can create ads specific to that. You can do it around the events you sponsor. One thing we do when we go to these professor conferences is we'll be sitting at our booth and someone will walk up and say, hey, I just saw your ad like when I was walking and not paying attention to the other booths. And here I am. And I was like looking at my phone, saw the Stukent brand, and then I looked up and saw your booth. That type of connection between digital and in person is becoming more and more possible. And so I highly recommend you toy around with that. Around schools, you can include the mascot. I love that idea, or their logo. And the same thing with sporting events. When let's say it's, if you're going to cheer on your local team, it's just cool to be able to see that, Central Credit Union is a sponsor of the Blazers, go Blazers, that sort of thing. It resonates and it's remembered. Email marketing. This one sounds dumb at first because you're like, this is Gen Z and I want new ideas. All right, I'm here to tell you email isn't dead. I'll share some cool numbers around that on the next slide. But email newsletter sponsorship. So there are groups like there's one that I follow for entrepreneurs. It's called The Hustle. And he doesn't even have a website, but he has literally hundreds of thousands of subscribers that get his email every week. And for businesses, for financial institutions to go and sponsor that audience and say, open your business account with us is very powerful. And it's not the, hey, go run Google ads. They've been around now for 17 years, right? It's not as new of a platform and new of a thing, but you can stand out. It does take a little bit more manual labor, but it is scalable because the volumes are pretty big in some of these places. You just have to go find them. The next one, list swaps, sounds bad, right? Like you're telling me I'm going to give away my email database to someone else. No, you're not going to do that. But there are instances where you can find partners that are willing to email out about an event you're putting on, about an event you're sponsoring, and you get your brand in front of their audience by them emailing their own list. And in turn, you promise, hey, when you have X, Y, or Z coming up, we would be willing to do an email blast for you, right? And then what you do is you then toy with the landing pages, right? And we'll talk more about landing pages in a minute as well. Embedded video. You can now embed the videos in the email. Another fun couple tips, you can do countdowns that are embedded in the email, so it shows how many hours, minutes left until something runs out in an email blast. Those have done very well for us, especially with a subject line like the countdown is on because the FOMO is there. Hey, there goes some Gen Z talk, FOMO. You guys know that one, I'm guessing. The video thumbnail that clicks through when you click to play. So instead of embedding the video so it plays in the email, you can also set it up where they click. It looks like they're going to click to play the video in email, but it actually kicks them over and you get that click through a little bit easier. And once you get the click through, you can do all sorts of cool things with remarketing, right? And we talked, and you guys already know the power of remarketing and you're using it. Remember with email marketing that webinars aren't dead. We've found a lot of success through webinars. CTRs are higher among the younger age group. I said I would share numbers. Here you go. So we're an ed tech business, right? We sign up the professor. Professor sends the new batch of students semester after semester. So our goal is to really catch the attention of the professor and then try to get lifetime value out of the student. And for us, When we send an email blast to students, the GenZ-ers, 30% open rate. When we send an email blast to teachers, professors, 25% open rate. So the younger generation is actually opening their email more. Why is that, right? You have to remember that you don't get to have social media accounts without having an email to create that social media account, right? So they're in email as well, and they don't get as much email. And I think it's in large part because they just don't, most marketers don't think to email that audience. You got to focus on the subject line. It never matters what's in your email if they don't open it, right? So focus on subject line, spend time brainstorming your subject line. And a big part of success we've found with our click-through rates and subject lines is FOMO. And then you got to keep the drip going. And if you leave with no other idea, I think one that's very powerful is, when was the last time that the CMO, the director of marketing, VP of marketing, when was the last time they actually played through the drip campaigns and read through the email drips that you guys have set up? If it's been a while, there's a lot of power in improving those and updating those and making sure they're not out of date. So a lot of companies have marketing automation in place for email drips. Make sure those are getting updated. So with video, I think that especially in financial institutions, you feel like, if I don't get millions of views, then it probably wasn't good. And that's just not true. There's a lot of power in small scale virality, especially if your financial institution supports a specific region. A great book on this subject is Contagious: Why Things Catch On by Jonah Berger. He's a professor at Wharton. A lot of really cool case study style examples in his book. So I recommend that. Another thing your marketing team should be doing is not waiting and worrying always about video that's professionally created. Promo.com, Fiverr.com are a couple of platforms where you can go get video created for cheap and there's a lot of DIY, really good video content there. So check those out and make sure your team knows about them and are using them. You can sponsor online communities, podcasts, Facebook groups, Twitter chats, YouTube channels, and you want to find ways to get them to a website where you can get the cookie placed and get the remarketing going. So I'm a part of a group called Entrepreneurs of Idaho. There's 1,650 members. If you run a bank in Idaho, there's no sponsors to this group today. I know it because I've been a part of it since almost day one. And there's 1,650 business owners that you could go reach. It's very targeted marketing and targeted advertising, but it has a lot of potential. It's not Google, it's not YouTube ads, it's much smaller scale, but it's very targeted. There's another group on Facebook I'm not a part of, 51,000 members, right? To go and sponsor a group of entrepreneurs. If you want to create more business accounts, great place to do that. You want landing pages that are personal, right? And so if you're running an ad that is for that sporting event and for that team, the Blazers, let's say, you want the landing page to say that Central Credit Union or Central Bank, whatever, I'm just making up names, right? We are proud to be their sponsor. And so they feel good seeing their team on screen, and then they associate that with you, and it goes a long ways. So here's the idea I hope you'll take action on the most, and a big part of why I decided to spend this time with you. I hope the other ideas are helpful. I hope this one resonates the most, and I'm excited to share it with you, and I'm going to go fast. Let's take the next poll here. This is where I bring up the financial literacy simulation. Wait, my poll didn't show up yet. Did I miss a place where it's going to be? Let's jump into the poll right now. Have you ever used financial education in schools as a growth initiative? Curious to see if anyone is already doing that sort of thing. I think it's a really interesting thing to consider. Okay, cool. So 20% are saying yes. It's teetering right now as the numbers come in. 80% say no. Now it's 80 and 20 basically. 20% are saying yes, they've done some education initiatives, and I love that. Thank you for giving back to educators. Our mission at Stukent is help educators, help students, help the world. And I know if you guys get involved in helping with financial literacy, you'll make a difference in the world. And there's a lot of power in that. We teamed up with Idaho Central Credit Union. 65% of all the high school students in Idaho have signed up in the first 9 months to use our financial literacy simulation. So we're all over the map in our panhandle state of Idaho. And it's in large part thanks to Idaho Central Credit Union stepping up and saying, hey, we'll pay for schools to get to use your financial literacy curriculum. And let me tell you why they're excited about that. Okay. And you guys know this part, 50% of 15-year-olds don't have a bank account yet. I think Idaho Central Credit Union looks at it and goes, we want to be there when they're learning about financial literacy and when they're thinking about opening their first account. What we do is we give branding inside the simulation. So we simulate the full online banking experience. And like I said, that students are earning 65 grand in simulated income per year. We simulate them getting to apply for an auto loan and embed the financial institution in that experience. We simulate them buying a house. This part's really cool in the simulation. I'll go fast here because I don't want to talk just about the simulation, but they get to buy a home. But the home is actually a desk in the seat in the classroom. And there are desks. I don't know if you'll remember back to when you were in high school, but there are desks that are more valuable. The one that's by the door where you can get out of class the fastest, the one that's the furthest from the teacher, and now for GenZ-ers, the one that's closest to the outlet are worth more. So it creates an economy in the classroom where students are willing to pay more for the desk by the outlet, and they can learn how to be house poor because they'll do it. They'll sucker for that temptation of buying the more expensive house that's by the outlet. And all of a sudden that 65 grand doesn't take them as far as they thought it would. So there's a lot of neat things with the simulation, but the financial institution is embedded throughout that experience for the students. We can then report and track back for the institution how many clicks are generated and driven back to the landing page that you can create that can be specific to those schools. And remarketing works all the same here. One of the greatest benefits is kid goes home, uses home computer to do his homework, and then mom and dad get on the computer later, and all of a sudden your remarketing is running. You can do co-branded flyers and banners for the different education events. There's in-person virtual trainings that we put on for the educators. And those are great opportunities for the PR that comes from that. We've had some great opportunities there, and also at the legislative level in the state of Idaho where it's not required you pass a financial literacy class to graduate. We've done the blog post thing. There's the weekly emails to eligible schools that also gets your brand in front of all the teachers over and over again. There's custom video announcements that we created, and I didn't have time to include that in my presentation, but basically the first time the student logs in, it tells them that the reason they get to use the simulation and learn financial literacy and be smart is because of the financial institution sponsoring. So there's social and digital ad opportunities. We do the print mailers, the student and teacher swag, the conference sponsorships. There's a student assignment on your financial institution where they can go to your website and they're supposed to go learn specific things. If you're interested in that, by the way, you can go to stukent.com/sponsorship to learn more. We'll set you up with the remarketing ads from there, and you won't see the end of us for a while, right? But if you're not interested, no sweat, don't go to the site. Stukent.com/sponsorship. Guys, my email is stewart@stukent.com. If you have specific questions or you have interest in that, I'd love to open it up for questions, Lakina, if there is still some time for that. If not, we'll go straight to the panel, but you tell me. And guys, thank you for being with me.
Thanks so much, Stuart. Definitely some very interesting information. We do have one question from Carolyn A. Do you run this simulator in Canada?
Yes, the simulator is ran in Canada. We have high schools in both the US and Canada.
Awesome. Carolyn, I hope you're still here, so I hope you heard that. Thank you again so much, Stuart. That was a super insightful presentation. And I'm going to take this minute to do a quick intro into our next panel discussion. So thank you so much, Stuart.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so next we have our panel discussion. If I can have all panelists, please turn your cameras on. There's Natalia. Travis is joining us. So today we are welcoming Ruby Walia, former EVP, Head of Digital Banking at HSBC, Natalia Demidova, Director, Data Science and Analytics at ATB Financial. Welcome, Natalia. Hi, Ruby.
Hi.
And also Jeff Bambalis, Director, Marketing and Strategic Partnerships at Credibly. And joining as our moderator today is Travis. Travis, I'll hand it over to you now to start the introductions. We're just waiting for Jeff, but you can go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, Ruby, let's go ahead and start with you. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll move on to you, Natalia.
Hi, I'm Ruby Walia. Sorry, a little bit of a pause there while I was unmuting myself. I am a digital and technology executive. I've led transformational initiatives at several large Fortune 500 companies over the years. Most recently, I spent time at HSBC, where I led digital banking in North America.
Hi, I'm Natalia Demidova. I'm a Director of Data Science Analytics and Professional Practices in Internal Assurance or Internal Audit at ATB Financial, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And we are bringing continuous monitoring, automation, and big data advancement to move audit into the future.
Hey, I'm Jeff Bambalis, Director of Marketing and Strategic Partnerships at Credibly. We're a fintech SMB lender. On the side, I also offer independent consulting to financial institutions. Thanks for having us.
Perfect. Thank you all. My name's Travis Draper. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Stukent, and I am just here to moderate and help glean some good information from our fine panelists. Got some questions for you. The first one, and this is for all of you, go ahead and volunteer, or actually let's start with Jeffrey and then we'll move back to Natalia and then Ruby. We'll go backward. What are some of the changing demands Gen Z is having?
Yeah, absolutely. So Gen Zs are digital lights. They love the new tech, the new platforms, really big on social and surprisingly email, right? So some of the changing demands are more about, hitting them with the right content over the right platform at the right time. And, as we tend to see more specialization on these platforms, they want to see that with the outreach.
I'm assuming I can carry on.
Yeah.
I wanted to look at this question from the perspective of in the context of the workforce. So Generation Z is entering the workplace, and because of their high-tech and hyper-connected upbringing, they will bring a new set of behaviors, expectations, and preferences into the workplace. So Gen Z-ers share millennials' desire to work in jobs that they're passionate about, and in organizations that they aligns with their values and goals. So the few changing demands that the Generation Z will create or is creating for the employers is high-end focus on wider generational gap at work. So there will be an increase in the complexity of managing and working across generations, especially considering that more than 75% of workers identify managing multi-generational teams and different work expectations across generations as challenges. So it will be a challenge that Generation Z will highlight for the employers. Another aspect that I was thinking of is the increased desire for work-life harmony. So helping Generation Z strike that appropriate harmony between work and life will be critical. So in fact, the stats show that burnt out employees are 63% more likely to call out sick and 3 times more likely to quit. And the last point that I'd like to make is what I would call the blend of high touch and high tech. So the data shows that even though Generation Z is the first fully digital generation, they want human elements at work. So in fact, 72% of Generation Z want to communicate face-to-face at work. And I guess the top 2 most important factors for Generation Z at work are supportive leadership and positive relationships at work. So the question for the leadership becomes, how do we meet those expectations?
Those are great responses. Ruby?
So, according to surveys, Gen Z feels more uncertain about the future than other generations. And I think there's several things that play into it. That includes social media, climate change, the diversity-related issues that have been surfacing more recently, even the national debt. All of these macro factors change their outlook and how they frankly want to be engaged with. And so I think organizations have to think about those kinds of topics and how do they create messages that feel authentic to this generation.
Great, thank you. And Natalia, I can relate to hiring Gen Z and needing to cater to the mission driven. They need to buy into your mission, and they do love in-person interaction. The socialization is super important for Gen Z.
Right.
What is Gen Z looking for in financial services?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, back to that personal relationship, we've seen some great success with further segmenting within, the generational bands, right? When you look at like the boomers, right, we see a lot of people who are at similar life stages, right? They have a similar age gap. When we're talking about Gen Z, we're talking about people who are, about 10 years old all the way through entering college. So really getting to understand on a granular level who they are and what they're interested in, and then being able to go ahead and follow through and execute and provide content, information, insight, a tailored experience that resonates with them is really powerful.
Well, my answer will be short. I wanted to get to the root cause of what drives the Gen Z. And my research showed that savings rather than spending is a financial driver for Gen Z. So as far as financial institutions go, they would need to keep developing innovative savings products and services that automatically save money into accounts for clothes or dining. And Gen Z could be the first generation to ditch debt and credit cards and manage cash and credit on their smartphones.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Gen Z, because of their wide-scale adoption of mobile devices and social media and apps, they're really focused on being able to manage services in their life through that one device. And so apps that provide them with financial services, that engage with them contextually in a highly relevant, personalized way, can really make inroads. They also are less focused about on privacy. They're comfortable getting push notifications and SMS messages. And so organizations that can engage with customers through those channels are more likely to break through and gain adoption from this cohort because they want those kinds of digital services. They want to be given little nudges or soft advice or suggestions saying, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And saving money is definitely on their radar. And they like to be able to organize their life into, okay, these are some goals I have. And this is how I can accumulate money towards that goal. There are lots of apps, Stash, Mint, Stockpile, which provide those kinds of capabilities. And we've seen a lot of engagement and adoption with Gen Z in particular.
No, good to know. How this last one is kind of relevant to the last one because it's about Gen Z's financial services and what they're interested in. And specifically, since they're more digitally oriented, how has the impact of COVID shifted this generation's view on financial services and how they bank?
Yeah, so, I would just say, I think it's reaffirmed their belief that the digital engagement, being able to access services digitally, is the more sensible approach. Because right now, going into branches seems like it's fraught with issues. And so fundamentally, it's been reaffirmation for them. I'm sure it makes them feel good. And every bank I talk to, their engagement metrics have just gone through the roof.
I have a little bit of a I don't know. Actually, I found this question very interesting, so I gave it a thought because we're still living through COVID and not out of the woods yet. So, in my perspective, the coronavirus yanked the economic rug out from under Gen Z. They're worried, even frightened by health and financial risks. Banks and credit unions have a unique opportunity to reach out to a demographic that was already anxious about money. So in my personal opinion, we're seeing a bit of a reset in terms of how Gen Z and also millennials value material possessions, given how tough things are. So they're now starting to think about what they consider important in tough economic times and what they can do without. I'm not sure of the long-term ramifications of this yet, but it is a conversation that we will continue to have, I'm sure. And coronavirus have caused many of Gen Z to rethink how they spend their money and what their financial goals are.
Yeah, and just expanding on what Talia said, like this generation's already been anxious about money, and there's been some recent studies conducted that show, while they're, very progressive and forward-thinking in terms of, understanding financial literacy, over 80% of Gen Z gets all of their, financial knowledge from their parents, right? And the world that they grew up in versus the world we're in now is vastly different, right? Like what we're going through is absolutely unprecedented. So again, just a huge opportunity for, thought leaders to go ahead and educate this group and, establish some lifelong relationships out of it.
Yes. And from a consumer perspective, I can tell you that COVID has highlighted any potential issues a banking industry has had with their digital services. If you're not providing everything that they need digitally, it's been on display. What are some of the digital methods that have or have not worked for your institutions or in your relationships with those institutions?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go first on this one. So one thing that's worked incredibly well for us is email. And not just email, but going ahead and really breaking out the types of email that we're sending, right? So we actually use a separate template depending on what type of communication it is. And we have really extensive system preferences. So there's probably 15 different email types that you can opt in or out of, and having one that looks more like a transactional email, one that looks like a random engagement email, one that's just brand awareness, one that looks like it's coming directly from your sales rep, right? Going ahead and establishing that dichotomy throughout your engagement, touch points, everything, it can really boost things. So while we've seen a little bit of lift on, the more transactional emails, we've seen 2x lift with, when it finally comes from a sales rep, right? You slap the email signature in there. It's part of a drip campaign, but by priming them and kind of establishing, what kind of content to expect the second they open the email, you can respect their time and give them exactly what they're looking for.
In my experience, the types of digital marketing channels that work for me personally are YouTube, search engines, social media, and web pages. Content marketing works well for me as well because it typically provides inspiration or educational value for me personally, while simultaneously stimulating interest in someone's brand.
Ruby?
Thinking more broadly, anytime you take a process and a 20th century process and just try to replicate it digitally, I think that becomes a problem. And so I think back to some of the early account opening strategies that banks used, which required someone to go into a bank for a wet signature, and that, clearly does not work, right? So what you've got to do is create native digital experiences that are as frictionless as possible. What we've found is that focusing on customer acquisition, what works best is if you can have a seamless journey where someone who goes into Google, says what's the best credit card, gets redirected to a comparison site, which then links to your acquisition funnel. That kind of a journey works really well, and it's sort of well understood how you manage that whole ecosystem efficiently. But beyond that, when you start looking at your existing customers, or once a prospect has become a customer, the thing that we found most effective to deepen engagement and grow the relationship is really being able to reach out with the right contextual prompts. And so I'll give you an example of something that TD Bank has done for several years. If you're a customer of TD Bank, you have a credit card, your available balance on the credit card is low, but you go into a place where you might spend a lot of money. If you're pre-approved for a credit limit increase, the bank will send you a push notification while you're in that shop where you could spend a significant amount of money. And the message will be something like, "Hi, Travis, we've decided to increase your credit limit by $3,000, right? And it's real time, it's contextual, it's highly personalized. And it'll say, press this button to accept the terms. If you press the button, they provision the credit limit increase in real time. And when you go to the cash register, your transaction goes through, right? So being able to create the right context for that engagement. From a customer's perspective, this is great. My bank was thinking about me. They detected that I had a potential need. They provided a potential solution. Those kinds of things really work.
That's great. Thank you. This question is for Ruby and Jeffrey. How is your organization adapted to these changing demands, or how have they?
So, I think focusing in the last 6 months, the world has turned topsy-turvy, and so clearly, all organizations, not just banks, are thinking through what are the short-term implications, what changes, how do we manage our branch footprint if you're a bank, et cetera, et cetera. But if you step back and look at it at a more macro level, it's really, trying to figure out what's different about Gen Z. Again, this is a cohort that likes to do everything through their mobile devices. They like frictionless experiences. They like automated capabilities. If a bank can provide a capability where it'll automatically pay their bills, or present a set of bills once a month for review and approval to pay, or if a bank could automatically create a draft tax return, those kinds of capabilities really resonate with this group, right? And so when banks are thinking about what's different about this generation, they really have to think about what kinds of services they want and how they want to consume them, and create and offer those kinds of experiences to them.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to talk a little more micro strategy than macro strategy here. So to go ahead and do some of these things that Ruby's talking about. We're religiously studying heat maps, constantly optimizing user paths, conversion funnels, doing what we can to, provide less frictionless experience. Additionally, like, we're getting a little fancy with repurposing our content, right? And like one thing that needs to be noted is like our content is not just, an SEO strategy, things like that. We're doing it to educate the consumer. We're using little things like Vidyard, throwing a 5-second video that gets them excited about a piece of content, maybe turning things into a PDF deliverable as an attachment to an email because they're not going to go and read a 2,000-word blog post. Little things like that kind of, fit well with how they consume, works out really well for us.
Perfect. So where do you think, well, we're kind of going to change direction now. We're going to talk a little bit more about, Jeff, you've hit on it briefly, about the financial education of Gen Z. And where do you think we have dropped the ball when it comes to financial literacy for the youth?
So I think the approach that most banks have taken requires too much work and is too generic. So, tools like Quicken 25 years ago had the ability to go in and create a budget, and if you coded every check that you printed off the system, it would show you pretty bar charts about how you're doing compared to your budget, right? But we've also learned a long time ago that less than 3% of the customer base has the discipline to do that kind of budgeting exercise once a month even. And so what we've got to do is take some of the work out of providing customers with information that's timely and relevant and targeted on a very personal basis for when they could use it. So I'll give you a couple of examples of things that I've found work well. Again, I'll go back to TD Bank. For Canadian customers, one of the things they do, they have a program called My Spend. And after every credit or debit transaction, they send you a push notification that has a little graph. The transactions automatically categorized into one of 20 categories, groceries, entertainment, etc. And it shows what your spend velocity is this month as opposed to your average spend velocity in that category. So you're at the grocery store, you just spent $100. Before you leave the cash register, there's a little push notification with that graph showing, okay, here's what your monthly spend looks like, and here's what you just spent, and this is how you're doing this month. And you can see at a glance, am I above the line or below the line, right? And so it provides information that is relevant in the moment. And so things like that, or something a bit more proactive at the end of the month, getting a push notification that says, hey, great news, Travis, you spend $300 less this month than you usually do, right? And here are 3 options. Do you want to apply that towards the principal on your mortgage? Do you want to move it into your savings account? Or do you want to put it in your brokerage account if you have one, right? So, and now there's a little nudge. It's proactive. It gives the customer a sense of, oh, my bank's thinking about me and helping me manage my money. And those kinds of things are much more to Gen Z's way of engagement and utilizing information. And you can similarly use these moments to provide information or links or invitations to do a deeper dive into topics that might be relevant if you can detect what's going on in their context in real time and send that when it's timely.
When I was thinking about this question, I wanted to take a step back and ask myself, well, the key thing to ask here is why financial literacy is important to begin with. And financial literacy or financially literate consumers, they can manage money with confidence, which means effectively allocating their earnings to their goals and limiting or attacking their debt. So making a budget is our first step toward a true understanding of money management, right? So by not having financial literacy taught at school early, and I would go as far as teaching it at the elementary school level, we are creating a gap and breeding potential issues or inaptitude in money management.
Yeah, I agree. Jeff?
Yeah, so working with a lot of financial institutions in the past, a lot of people have had great ideas and didn't know where to start, right? So even if you know what you want to do, know how you want to implement it, right? Like still being in a position to go ahead and provide those experiences for people tends to be a problem, right? So one thing that we love doing is polling our customer base, right? Getting insights, getting data, things that we can do to go ahead and leverage in the future, right? But I kind of just wanted to talk about, taking that first step, how you go ahead and implement, right? It can be like a really large undertaking to go ahead and build an app, then get user adoption, do all these things, right? Just understanding what people want to be financially literate about, knowing that they learned it primarily in their home, right? And then just kind of enter the real world is honestly a great first step.
Perfect. Thank you. I think we kind of covered this next question a little bit, but if anyone has anything to add, it would be how can we improve? How can we do better? Ruby, I know you covered it in more immediate and hands-on ways, but what other ways could we improve?
Well, I think most financial institutions have a financial wellness microsite. And as I go browsing across them, what I'm struck by is that many organizations have outsourced those capabilities because they don't have the editorial team to maintain that content. And so you see a lot of the same generic advice in a lot of those financial wellness offerings from the big banks, right? And so I think what we really have to do is find ways to make it personal and relevant, and find ways to draw customers in to be able to consume information that's relevant for them on a timely basis. And I think it touches on what Jeffrey was talking about, which is really how do we get all this data and from our customers and analyze it. And banks, generally speaking, they've got large data programs, and they haven't necessarily spent enough of their resources focusing on financial wellness. A lot of the data resources are focused on straightforward marketing. But if they start thinking about wellness, they're really investing in their customers' journeys, financial journeys, and it'll eventually foster more loyalty and long-term engagement. So it's probably requires a little bit of a reprioritization within financial institutions to say, okay, besides just creating a wellness site where people can consume information, we have to think about what of all of that content is relevant for which customer at which stage in their life, and then how do we find ways to invite customers to look at the relevant information at the right time.
I agree with the sentiment. If we're thinking of within the organizational context, so those are all absolutely relevant elements, and focusing on spending, borrowing, earning, savings, and investing and protecting. These are the key elements of financial literacy that would have to be taught early. But I wanted, as I was contemplating the answer, I was thinking about it a bit more holistically. So stepping out of the organizational context and just thinking about the parenting. For those of us who have kids, I'm the mother of an 8-year-old son. We also experienced that taking an active parenting position, or that mindful parenting, teaching your kid how to grocery shop properly, and through that simple experiences, teaching the value of money or opportunity cost. Right? These are all invaluable examples that can be introduced very early on. So if you have $5 and you can either buy a toy or you can buy an ice cream, so you can buy either or, right? So which one is it going to be in the why, right? So teaching the why will basically drive that economic literacy throughout the childhood. And of course, then there is an organizational context from the school perspective, from the banking perspective, right? These are all, or insurance industry perspective. These are all new possibilities.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. I think we definitely have that one covered. So is your organization already doing something with your digital marketing efforts to include financial literacy?
Again, I think all of the banks that I've worked for have always had financial wellness offerings targeted typically at retail customers as well as small business clients. They, in some cases, have also developed apps that were targeted at children. So, the ability for parents to be able to assign chores to children and for children to earn money by signing up for and performing those chores. And you can also create, the children can also set goals. I want to save money towards, buying a new Xbox. And then as they perform chores and they get paid, that money can be used towards those goals. So I think, the banks have been creative about creating offerings like this, but I think there's a lot more that could be done.
I'll be brief on.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'll be brief with an answer. We have just recently introduced a 10-year strategy across the financial institute that I'm working for, and there is a huge element of artificial intelligence and a link between artificial intelligence and consumer, and definitely leveraging big data to analyze the trends and such and develop different offerings. So we're in the process of that. And then internal audit, we're in our microcosm where we would look at those things independently, but our goal within internal assurance is to drive the future of audit and utilizing artificial intelligence aspects like automation or developing continuous monitoring, leveraging the big data aspects of things. So this is our sort of approach to things.
Yeah, so one thing that we're really prioritizing is top of funnel content that is in line with our product suite or anything like that, but more so helps address all the pain points people are having, gets people thinking about the right things, and we really like to do it early in the buyer's journey, right? We're establishing more of a partnership that way as opposed to like the solicitation. And one thing I've noticed over the years working with a lot of institutions is while they may or may not have a great resource hub or something targeting this, the ones that don't always market it well, right? So do you have a customer login? How many of your customers use it, right? How many of them know that when you log in, it's not just transactional, right? There's this whole area dedicated to the resources, right? So, really finding helpful ways to engage with people, show them that you have this content there, getting their feedback on it so you can improve it, really helps build a relationship and also helps you build your content, right? If you can always have like a two-way street between your audience and the people who are creating the content, it tends to be far more effective at answering their needs in a relevant fashion.
Yeah. So all of that being said, what kind of resources go into making these new financial services? How do they operate? What does it take?
I think it requires a commitment to digital resources, to data analytics, to be able to understand your customers and what their needs are, and marry that with your organizational objectives, and then create very well thought out, targeted digital offerings that will, in a low friction way, engage customers and generate these results. But it does, it starts with a commitment to, yes, we're going to use digital and technology to transform the organization and how we engage, invite engagement and engage with customers.
I'll speak from the experience. So in the area that we work in, the human capital is highly valuable, and the individuals that work in these areas, they require the breadth and the depth of knowledge. And sometimes I would call them the unicorns, where there would be the highly trained in data and infrastructure knowledge and the back-end processes, and understanding also the business side of things and how the business translates into the technological and data enablement. This takes lead times to develop the skill set. There are far few in between of those individuals. These individuals are highly specialized, and that's being addressed through the cohesive teams and agile teams, of course, where the skills are complementary and intersectory as well. But definitely, it's on the cusp of my mind all the time, seeking for those talent opportunities and thinking of them proactively. I would say 2-3 years in advance.
Expanding on that, so it's awesome to develop and have a unicorn internally, but one thing that I always also love having is some way to understand the knowledge gap, right? Like if you're putting together awesome content that's just not going to translate well to your audience, it can pose a problem, right? So, taking a constructive approach, whether that be through polling people or, advanced data analytics to really understand who your people are that you're marketing to, et cetera, goes a really long way. Additionally, like I've also seen situations where, people are trying to develop, financial literacy tools with a finite budget, right? And without necessarily a quantifiable goal in the end, right? So like really setting the right expectations, understanding your goals, your milestone targets and things like that tends to be really powerful, right? Like you might develop all this content, it may not take off right away, but how do we refine it, improve it, keep promoting it, and, end up with an end product that, is perfect for our users.
Great. Thank you. That's all the questions that I had for you as the panel, but we have some questions that have come in through our Q&A section. The first one is, to humanize the connection with Gen Z, content is something we leverage, but we're having trouble standing out from all the other pieces of content available. Any suggestions for finservs on how to differentiate themselves?
Well, I think banks have a tremendous advantage, right? So banks enjoy a certain amount of trust that their customers feel towards the bank. And there is very much a one-to-one connection in the sense that if a bank sends you an email, you tend to open it because, well, it's the keeper of your money. And so they might be telling you something important. Now, unfortunately, a lot of times, those emails aren't as relevant as or meaningful as customers would want them to be. But customers will actually open and read anything that the bank sends them. And so I think it behooves the bank to really think about what content they're putting in. Every message shouldn't just be another offer, because that triggers the inclination for the customer to start thinking of the bank as a source of spam. But going back to the question, I would say that banks actually enjoy this great advantage that customers will actually read their messages. And so I think that's just something that they have to be mindful of and maintain that privilege so that customers keep on reading their messages.
Anyone else have an answer for that one? Moving on then. So what are some of the tech innovations that Gen Z will drive FIs to adopt in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think the Internet of Things, cloud computing, AI and ML, these are all enabling technologies. And if there's one thing about Gen Z, they have embraced technology with a vengeance. People talk about the phenomena consumerization of technology, which in an interesting way has actually turned around and affected large enterprises and caused the acceleration of their adoption of some of these technologies that consumers adopted first. And so I think you're going to see lots of, and pardon the reference, but Jetsons-like scenarios. The ability to tell your Alexa device, ask information from your Alexa device, how much do I have in my checking account? Or if you do a double take because you think the amount is smaller, continue that conversation with, okay, tell me what are the 5 biggest things I spent money on this month. And then the ability to route that information to a TV in your room where the bigger form factor is able to leverage, is able to display information better. These kinds of interaction models are going to become enabled by technology and will become embraced by consumers. And I think Gen Z will set expectations that organizations have to be able to provide those kinds of experiences that span multiple devices that are contextual to where they are. I think security, our understanding of how security is implemented will change dramatically. There'll be a lot more biometric capabilities built into financial systems. Having to remember a user ID and password will seem antiquated. So there's, as the technology hockey stick continues to rise, the pace at which these kinds of futuristic experiences are developed and rolled out will just continue to increase. And Gen Z, because of their demonstrated preference and willingness to embrace these kinds of experiences, will probably force organizations to spend more resources on that space.
Just to add to this, I was thinking another technology that comes to mind is the blockchain technology. So look at the lightning speed. It moves from a notebook sketch to an established technology. And the technology-driven change is so pervasive, there is no financial institute that will be immune to it. But my mind also, when I was thinking of this question, my mind also goes into the learning platforms. We heard of one today, but the ones that I came across would be Degree or Udacity, Udemy. So these are professional education platforms. Not being paid to promote any of them, so just a disclaimer. It's just something that I came across for the personal development and growth. And paired up with the COVID, right, where majority of us were forced to work from home and kind of moved out of the office space. So my mind wondered, how will that impact the educational system overall? This brick and mortar concept, right? And this idea of moving education online because universities had to adapt. And what's interesting that I found with those platforms that there is an interesting trend there. There is they provide this unique opportunity of connecting the knowledge and the curriculum devised by the lead technology companies such as Google, Facebook, Twitter. So there is a huge appealing element of getting this type of education from those online providers because they would be connecting immediately with the targeted employer, and the employer would devise the curriculum saying, this is what we need from you for you to become employable with us. So how would that impact the whole concept of traditional educational system that we have in place? Will it be streamlined over time? Will it be revamped and basically disrupted?
Lots of disruption happening from this generation, no doubt about that. This last question that's come in through the Q&A is a little bit, it's outside of the banking realm, and that's what it's about specifically. It says, banking has been referenced many times, but do you see anything unique relating to insurance, also part of financial services? So how does insurance communicate with Gen Z? Maybe tweak our answer.
Yeah, so insurtech, like fintech, is a whole space where there are startups that are focusing on providing digitally enabled solutions. So, just two examples pop to mind. There's now a category of apps called insurance, usage-based insurance, sorry. So UBI. There are several insurance companies that'll give you an app that when you're driving your car, it monitors your driving patterns. Are you breaking the speed laws? Are you accelerating away from traffic lights and stop signs more than you should? Are you cornering too fast? So they track all this data. They display it to you in a completely transparent way. You can, in a list of trips, you can scroll through on the app. You can pull up any trip that you took and see it displayed on a map along with all the incidents, noteworthy incidents, speeding or not, or braking too hard, etc., all displayed on the app, right? And if you are a good driver, and you can demonstrate that over a period of time, when it's time to renew your auto insurance policy, they'll give you discounts of as much as 25%, right? So there's several insurance companies that are now offering this capability. Another is gadget insurance. So there's a insurtech called Trove that they're not a direct to consumer. They tend to do partnerships with insurance companies in different markets and then embed their capability into the apps offered by that insurer. But you can, with that capability, take a picture of something, like if you went out and bought an expensive camera, you could take a picture of it and then insure it on the spot, right? And so for a certain demographic, those kinds of capabilities are very interesting. And you do see lots of innovation happening in the insurance space now. Even the ability, AIG now has the ability where if two cars get into an accident, you can take pictures and their adjusters will, of the pictures, well, first of all, they have AI capabilities that will automatically from the pictures figure out how much damage there is and what it'll cost to repair it. And so you basically get AI instead of a human adjuster. And if you want, you can then escalate and request that a human looks at it. But you're seeing all these interesting applications happening in insurance.
Sure. Anyone else got an answer for that one? From an education perspective, I know specifically for financial literacy, it's important for them to understand and know the financial impact of having insurance on their lives. And we, in our resource, help to teach and help them to shop for insurance and how to use that. I think that's it for the questions for the panel. If there's anything you want to say to close out, feel free to take a minute and do that. And then I think they'll jump back on and wrap this up.
I'd like to thank everybody. It's been fun. Thank you.
Yes.
Likewise, thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to spend time with your audience.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much for participating. Ina?
Hi, everyone. Sorry. It took me a while to jump back in. Travis, thank you for moderating that discussion. There was definitely a lot of learning and insight in that panel. Natalia, Jeffrey, Ruby, thank you for joining us today from your homes. It was a great discussion, and I hope you enjoyed being on the panel. And I just want to thank Stuart again for his earlier presentation. And I want to remind the audience that the presentation today has been recorded and will be sent out to the audience tomorrow, as well as the full deck is available for download if you go into the handouts section, and you're able to download everything there. And I also just want to take a minute to let the audience know that we do have a big virtual event for the Digital Marketing for Financial Service series. Usually we have a physical event in the fall, but of course everything is moved online now. So I just want to share with you the dates will be September 22nd and 23rd for the big DMFS event. And I'm just going to share that offer right now with everybody in the offers section. So that's it for today. Thank you again, panelists. And again, we have 10 minutes left in the live room. So I encourage anyone, if you'd like to stay and continue asking questions or engaging, please do. But I'll say goodbye for now. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.